So how many of you have taken an ice bath after you've been out for a nice long run, or you've done a race or something like that? You know, you've worked out and then you jump in an ice bath. Now for me, that's not something I have done in a fairly long time. When I first met my wife, she was a big fan of taking ice baths. So obviously if it's something that she liked, that's something that I would do. So after a hard workout or after a race, I would empty the ice bin from the freezer into a bathtub full of cold water. But I live in Florida. Even our cold water isn't cold. And even when you add ice to it, it doesn't make it a real ice bath. Now, there was one time, a long time ago, when I was doing the Manitoba Marathon, and after the Manitoba Marathon, I went back to the hotel and I filled the bathtub with just tap water. Got a couple of buckets of ice from the ice machine, but I decided to get in the tap water first. And of course, being from Florida, I might be a little bit of a pansy when it comes to cold weather, but I remember that I could barely get into the tap water, the cold water from the tap in Manitoba. And needless to say, I didn't add ice to that ice bath. My ice bath in that situation was just a cold tap water bath. So I don't have a lot of experience with super ice baths, but I did come across an article in Canadian Running Magazine. And the article was about a study that was conducted a couple of years ago. And look, if this article is published in Canadian Running Magazine, I would assume that means that the majority of readers are Canadian runners. And Canadian runners probably know what they're talking about when it comes to ice baths, because I would imagine that every bath they take is an ice bath. I don't know. Anyway, Canada can be a cold place, so when they do ice baths, I'm sure they do it right. The article is new, the study is a couple of years old, but the study looked at the possibility that cooling your body after a workout might actually stop the body from synthesizing protein in order to promote muscle regeneration and muscle healing. You know what I'm talking about? Recovery. So basically, they're asking, do ice baths stop you from recovering as well as you might without one? Well, let's get into it. And my friends, this is also the weekly running and training vlog, where the main purpose of this video is for you to tell me about your week of running. I want to hear about your successes, and I definitely want to hear about those setbacks. I also want to hear if you're a fan of ice baths. And of course, now would be a stellar time to just whack that like button, and of course, if you're not subscribed, consider doing so. Okay, so the study. The researchers were looking at an athlete's ability to absorb protein after a cold water bath. And to do this, they looked at 12 healthy men between the ages of 19 and 23. And yes, I recognize this is not a very diverse study. In fact, looking at the age range between 19 and 23, it's likely the researchers just opened up their office door and yelled for the first 12 students to come forward and ask them if they want to participate in the study. Okay, but we're not going to get bogged down with equality and whether or not these results are representative of an entire population. Let's just assume they are. So the participants did a bunch of resistance type exercises, and when they were done, the researchers took a blood sample, then they went for 20 minutes in an ice bath. When they emerged from that ice bath, they then took another blood sample. They then drank a protein-rich beverage and had another blood sample taken. And this protocol was repeated for 2 weeks. So now I think about it, maybe this was the reason that they could only find 12 guys between 19 and 23, because that seems like a pretty miserable 2 weeks of having blood taken several times and doing an ice bath every day for 2 weeks straight. So get this, and I want you to listen to this if you are someone that actually likes taking an ice bath after your workout. So the results showed that post-exercise ice bathing lowers the incorporation of amino acids from digested proteins into myofibrillar protein by as much as 26% over the 5 hours post-exercise. That's huge. So even though these results were found across the board, and the board being very small of just 12 men, does raise an important question. And that question is, are ice baths really necessary post-exercise at a time when we are looking to actually build muscle or repair our muscle that we've broken down in a said workout? I don't know. As someone that doesn't take ice baths on a regular basis, it's pretty easy for me to say, okay, I'm not going to take ice baths. That's why I want to hear from you. Do you like taking ice baths after you do a hard workout? And now that you know that it's not allowing your body to synthesize protein properly, are you going to stop? Now I know the study is very limited, and we definitely have to have more participants in the future iterations of this study. But I do wonder if ice baths are appropriate at other times. Like, can I go for a hard workout, or let's say race a marathon, come home, eat, relax, and maybe the next day get in an ice bath to help my legs feel good, and maybe get other benefits from the ice bath that we would normally get immediately after the workout? Let me know your thoughts. Anyway, I had a pretty good week of running. Now, I was out and about this week, so I had to adjust my running schedule accordingly, just because I knew I wasn't going to be able to get the same days off that I normally take. And that means that I started off on Monday with 10 miles on the nose, but it was a workout. I warmed up for 3 miles, I did 6 800s with 400 meters recovery in between, and then I cooled down for 2.75 miles. And because I did a workout on Monday, that means Tuesday was an easy day, 10.4 miles, very cruisy. And then I moved my tempo run forward one day. I knocked out a total of 8.1 miles. I warmed up for 2 miles, I did 5 miles at tempo pace, and then I cooled down for 1.1 miles. Now, this was the biggest change. I had to move my long run a couple of days earlier in the week. On Thursday, I knocked out 16.5 miles, and I actually ran with a couple of guys from my running club, so this was a really nice treat. You got to fill in the long run, so it wasn't totally boring. But basically, it was about 4 miles to running to meet them. I ran with them for 8 miles, and then I ran home, which was another 4 miles, or 4.5 miles, bringing the total to 16.5. On Friday, it turns out that my weekend's plan changed, so I decided to take Friday off, which isn't actually out of the ordinary. Then on Saturday I went out and I ran 8.2 miles, but I broke it up into 2 different runs of 4.1 miles each. And basically this was just because I was trying out a couple of pairs of shoes and I wanted to run a little bit in each pair of shoes. Then I wrapped up my week on Sunday with 20 miles. Now you might remember I already did my long run earlier in the week at 16.5 miles, but because my plans changed, I was now available to go and run with the group. And I knew that a couple of the people were actually running 20 that day, so I made the decision to just go ahead and run with them. And it turned out to be a pretty epic run. I felt good at the end of it. Really glad I knocked out a 20. Anyway, that brought my week's total to the highest that I've had in a little while at 73.28 miles, which is about 117.9 kilometers. So all in all, pretty good week. Guys, thanks for staying all the way to the end of the video. If you have made it all the way to this far in the video, why don't you go ahead and drop a unicorn emoji in the comments so I know who you are. As you remember, I also want to know successes and setbacks of last week. And if you take an ice bath, be kind, be happy, run well. See you in a couple of days.